Oh, 5 check marks already? No way.
Oh, we got to add the big Facebook page though. I can add that one real quick while we are getting
While we're
ready.
letting it breathe,
Hit
as
this
Chad would
one.
say.
Hit save. It's spinning, spinning, spinning,
Almost.
and go.
We're good. There we go. Up. I thought we had it. I thought I saw a check mark. There we go. The beautiful green check mark. Welcome in, everyone, and good evening, Broncos country. This is another Huddle Up podcast, a special bye-week edition of the Huddle Up podcast. And joining me, as you can see, is not Chad Jensen. I'm on the left side of the screen, so save your freakouts for tomorrow when Chad's back. Joining me tonight is my co-host, my fill-in co-host, a part of Broncos country for sure, and an honorary football priest. That would be Scott Kennedy. Scott, how are you? How was your weekend?
Good. It was busy. So if it's not baseball, it's soccer. So up to Tennessee for a couple games, and just got back about 4 o'clock, and it was nice. It was nice. So it's nice either when you're playing on a Thursday or you have a bye week, and it's like, all right, now we can chill a little bit and kind of take away some of the panic of the football weekends.
Yeah, I appreciate you hopping on here with me tonight and filling in for Chad. We were getting some
Happy to be here.
questions
Pleasure.
about Chad. Christian says, "What happened to Chad?" And hey, Scott. Mark thinks Chad is. Oh, he says Scott. Okay, I thought he said Chad. Chad is at a family event tonight. I believe it's for something to do with Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday. I might be wrong about that, but he has a family obligation tonight. So just a one night absence for Chad. He'll be back tomorrow. But joining me, like I said, is Scott. And we want to go through some talking points that we didn't get to on the Huddle Up podcast that's happened in recent days. And number one on that agenda is the 3-year contract extension for Mr. Tim Patrick. And I was surprised. You know, Chad had texted me, said, "Can you grab this?" And I'm like, "What happened now? You know, what Broncos bad story came out now? Who they getting rid of?" And it turned out they paid someone, and that someone would be Tim Patrick. And you know, Scott, it's not too often that you see a person getting millions of dollars and all this money, and you say to yourself, "Good for him." I'm so happy he's getting rewarded. But Tim Patrick is one of those good guys. Homeless, you know, it took a while, bounced around for a couple teams. He played under a lot of receivers for a couple years before shining in Denver, but he's become probably the most reliable clutch receiver the Broncos have, and that's saying something considering they also have Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. I thought it was a great deal, Scott, for the Broncos. I mean, they're paying well below market average, but and there it goes again. My camera doesn't want to work with me one more time. But I thought for Tim Patrick, though, I'll serve it over to you. I'm really happy for him. And kudos to George Payton for identifying a foundational player, someone who contributes on a weekly basis, and rewarding him. That sends a good message to the rest of the team.
I had a couple of thoughts on this, and the first one I had was what you just said. This is a good deal. This looks like a really good deal for the Broncos. It leaves you a lot of flexibility that you can still have to go after other guys. And Tim Patrick wasn't exactly a household name around other fan bases. You know, as you know, looking at other places in the NFL, Tim Patrick is really underrated amongst other receivers in the NFL, but he was starting to get that attention. You know, general managers, the people that matter, know exactly who he is. But as far as, you know, fans and other people and pundits making a push, you know, I saw people talking about way down here in Atlanta. If it was the morning, I'd say drink. You know, talking about Tim Patrick's the guy we need. I'm like, you're not going to be able to afford Tim Patrick. You're out of your mind. But I didn't think he'd be a 10 million guy. The second thing, Zach, that I thought of in recruiting, if you've ever heard of the term silent commitment, we've got a commitment for this guy, but we want to hold the good news until we really need it. Like after we get our butts kicked one day in a rivalry game, and then we're going to release the commitment on Monday. So we have some good news. So as far as cantankerous and upsetting and angry, I think we hit the high point last week with the Denver Broncos fans. This is one of those moves that maybe it's been in the works for a while, maybe it hasn't, but it couldn't have come at a better time to have some good news for Broncos country.
You know, that's a point that I tweeted out. It was smart on George Payton's part to announce that or work on it during the bye week, coming off a bad victory when the news cycle is being dominated right now by Teddy Bridgewater's non-effort and how bad the Broncos have looked. He's signing a fan favorite and locking him down. What it also does is kind of sets the bar for Courtland Sutton, who's going to be a UFA after the season, and they have to make a decision now. are they going to pay Cortland as well? Just because they paid Patrick doesn't mean they can't or won't pay Sutton, but this kind of sets the leverage bar for him. Like, listen, Cortland, this is what Tim Patrick's getting. He's producing at a more, I would say, consistent level overall than you right now. So, maybe take it or leave it, but I'm just happy that someone who's put their blood, sweat, and tears into the Broncos has thrived, despite a litany of bad quarterbacks, bad coaching staffs. I want to see what Tim Patrick can do. Could you imagine in a better offensive system? He's producing the way he is in the Broncos system. So I was just really happy for him, and I thought George Paton handled this really well. And it goes to show Broncos country once again, there's a lot of problems plaguing Dove Valley right now. George Paton is not one of them. He is part of the solution, and the Broncos are in very, very good hands.
Yeah, Nick and I did an entire show on general manager rankings from ESPN. It was like the front office rankings and everything that came in. How does the program and the franchise rank? And the front office got a D or something. I'm like, how does the front office get a D when you've got this wonderful roster and you've got a ton of cap space? I know you didn't go get a quarterback. You didn't draft a quarterback, but, neither did these other teams. So that seems strange to me. I'm thoroughly impressed with where the Broncos are in the ability to move forward now, And speaking of moving forward, I wanted to hit Christian De Jesus real quick with a super came in early, real early, like an hour and 10 minutes before we came on. So
thank you.
Christian says, do you think that our head coaching search is going to come down to Moore or Daboll or others? Do you think it'll come down to those two?
You like to think that I forget the name of the expression, Occam's razor, the most logical solution is also the most prominent one. That's the route more likely chosen. Is you think the Broncos would go after a young up-and-coming head coach after failing with two defensive minds and an older kind of curmudgeon guy like Vic Fangio. You're asking this question, Christian, though, and I think you're asking it because both the Bills and the Cowboys had major letdown games today, especially on offense. So maybe you're kind of framing the question as to, are they still hot candidates? Are they still candidates the Broncos would pursue? And I say yes. I mean, as of right now, you have to look at their full body of work. You can't judge them on one game. I think they're two of the brightest minds in the NFL, and they would be head coaches sooner than later, in my opinion. But there's also that sneaking suspicion, and we've seen some rumors that George Paton's going to go after a retread, someone like Dan Quinn, someone like Jason Garrett, someone like Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles defensive coordinator. I don't know about that yet. I think he's going to have a comprehensive search if and when he fires Vic Fangio. I'm sure there's going to be older names in the fray, veteran names in the fray, but I gotta believe, Scott, that they're gonna have a Kellen Moore, Brian Daboll, Greg Roman, Joe Lombardi, Joe Brady in there somewhere.
Well, the one I want to scratch off of that list for you is Joe Brady. Joe Brady's a flash in the pan that had a good season at LSU with a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He's been, if you take that off of his resume, you go, who is this guy?
Still better than Pat Sherber.
I know, but that's you want a higher bar than that, The other one I want to revisit, because there's a couple big supers coming in that I want to get to first, is Dan Quinn. Now, I'm not advocating for Dan Quinn, but he's not as bad as you think, and I want to hit on that just a little bit. After we come and say hello to Michaela, who's coming in with a big red, super, and she's saying so happy for Timmy P is one of my favorites. Is there anybody that isn't? Is there anybody that looks at this deal and just says, "Oh, not that guy"? I mean, what a great move. Like I said, we needed some good news in Broncos country, and this is good news because, as you mentioned about setting the bar for Courtland Sutton, it doesn't mean either or anymore. Now it means both. Depending on what you do at the quarterback position, one of the reasons you have so much flexibility is because you don't have a $25 million quarterback on the roster. And that shouldn't happen for the next couple of years. But you can then build the weapons. You can now go sign Courtland Sutton too. So what a wonderful move. What a wonderful gesture for Michaela. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michaela. Scott is absolutely right in what he's saying there. And in terms of, to his point, the Broncos are projected to have over $71 million in salary cap space in 2022. If they want to sign Courtland Sutton, they can sign Courtland Sutton and a lot of other players really easy. And I get the feeling, Scott, I might be wrong here, that George Paton has a plan. He might not know who his quarterback is just yet, but I think he wants to retain the talent around the quarterback. Sure. And that means locking down the players that he can right now. You mentioned not having a big-time salary at the position. Well, you also have young talents like Jerry Jeudy on the rookie contract, Javonte Williams on the rookie contract, Noah Fant on his rookie contract. I think George Paton wants to have a solid supporting cast, if not elite supporting cast, for whoever is quarterbacking Denver next year and going forward. And Tim Patrick is at the front of the line. Again, he is such a big boon for any quarterback. Throw it up, and like Courtland Sutton, more than likely he'll come down and get it.
Oh, I have my biases, and I'm very biased towards the big receiver because they're always open. You know, you can throw them open, and that in the running game, no long run happens without a wide receiver block. And when you got a big physical receiver, they help in the running game as well. So you know, I think it's great news. And like I said, when one of your initial reactions is, "Wow, he took a hometown discount for some guaranteed money, could have done better." That's really good for the team. I mean, at the end of the day, oh, I'm only getting 18 million instead of 24 million, dude. Your next 5 generations of family won't ever have to work again. Right. You're okay. So Clado coming in, Clado Tornado, coming back to the coaching discussion, says, do you think that talking about the timing here, because things are a little different this year. So this is a good question that I want to hear from you also, naturally. So do you think it's most likely that Fangio is fired before week 15 so we can start the interviews? Also, my dream offseason is Kellen Moore with Malik Willis. What do you guys think? Sub to Huddle Up, state of being.
Appreciate you, Clado. As always, do you think it's likely if he's fired before week 15? I don't think he's going to be fired before week 15, so that point of the question is kind of irrelevant to me. I think George Paton is riding this out until after the season, then he'll make his decisions and his house cleaning will start then. In terms of pairing Kellen Moore and Malik Willis, Scott, it's still early. I know this quarterback class of 2022 isn't that revered. They're not all that great on paper, but my guy right now is Matt Corral. I think he's QB1 in this draft class. Malik Willis is a guy who's Trey Lance. He has a ton of upside, but he needs a ton of work as well in the meantime. And again, this is my speculation. I think George Paton is the type of guy where he'd rather have his, don't take this the wrong way, his Kirk Cousins, meaning a pro-style, day-one ready kind of quarterback, or a Mac Jones for a more recent example. And that guy right now, as of November 21st, is Matt Corral. But if you pair Corral with Kellen Moore, Brian Daboll, Greg Roman, Byron Leftwich, I think we can take off Joe Brady Scott and put on Leftwich's name there. Any one of those young offensive minds paired with arguably the QB1 in this class would bring a lot of dynamicism and excitement to the Broncos offense.
So I agree with you on Malik Willis, and he is a perfect candidate to sit a year. And you know, we can go through the schedule, but the Broncos are probably going to be picking 15-ish, 15 to 18, somewhere in there. That's a good spot for Malik Willis, for a guy like that to come in. You don't want him playing right away. You do not want him playing next year. So who do you have? You mentioned Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a pretty damn good quarterback. Yeah. I mean, he's a big upgrade.
I don't get the hate.
Yeah, he's a big upgrade over Teddy Bridgewater. You just wonder, you know, you start thinking, okay, if we go rookie and we go free agent, who's that free agent going to be, and what's it going to cost? Because that becomes a big thing. One of the best things about Teddy Bridgewater is you didn't pay him anything. It didn't cost you anything to get him, and you're hardly paying him any money anyway. So it was a low risk, low reward type of move, and you're not tied to him for another year. It's done. We can start over. We've talked about this, Zack, about George Paton and the coaching staff. Well, hell, it's the same thing with the quarterbacks. It's like, okay, we'll give these guys 1 year shot. Then we're going to do it my way.
Right.
So I think that's a possibility too, is you get two new quarterbacks.
Or, how about this? Kellen Moore and, Aaron Rodgers, Kellen Moore and Russell Wilson. If they go that route, I still think they're going to go the young, developmental quarterback route as they should, but that's also an option for Denver after they picked up some capital in that Von Miller trade. Harking back to Scott's point about how good George Payton's done, I don't understand why he got a D, by the way. He might not get an A+ to be objective and fair, but I would say A-.
They rated it based on they didn't fix the quarterback position. Well, they're in position to. When you look at the roster and you say, okay, where are the holes on the roster? Yeah, the phrase that's used is they call it a donut. There's a hole in the middle of this team at the quarterback position, but everything else is pretty darn good. And what'd you say, $70 million? And I've got the draft capital to go in and fix this. And GLP, Gary Lees Palmer, comes in with some stars and says, hey, Zack and Scott, really good news about Patrick. Like I said, this was universally good news for a change. That doesn't happen real often.
What I don't get, though, is the double standard about the quarterback situation now and how it's working against Peyton. So Teddy Bridgewater is the best QB the Broncos have had since Peyton Manning, drawing comparisons to Tom Brady and Peyton Manning as well. And yet you're getting a D because of the quarterback position. That's the route that George Payton went. I mean, he passed on Justin Fields, and I don't know how much of you're watching of the Bears, Scott. He got hurt today. He really hasn't blown my socks off personally.
No, I'm very vocal about Justin Fields being my guy after Lawrence. I would have taken him too. If I was the Jets, I would have taken him. I'm not going to come with any knee-jerk reactions about rookie quarterbacks. None of them look very good. Mac Jones looks the best, and his overall rating is still in the 20s. I'm like, let's see. If I take a decent quarterback, if I put Trevor Lawrence on in switch him with Mac Jones, what are we saying about Mac Jones? Oh my God, he's hamburger meat. He's been being killed, and Trevor Lawrence is the next big thing. You've got a 6-time winning Super Bowl coach, a good system who spent a ton of money, and Mac Jones is there to shepherd things around. Yeah, Mac Jones looks okay. He looks okay. But I'm not ready to make any kind of decisions based on the what we've seen so far. But no, none of them have looked very good so far. It's tough. It's a big jump to the NFL as a rookie quarterback. So, again, getting back to your original point, I didn't get it either. I didn't get it to the point. This is 5 months later. I'm still harping about it.
I just don't get holding quarterback against Peyton when he was saddled with Vic Fangio and Pat Shurmur, and they were the ones that spearheaded the trade for Teddy Bridgewater. But guys, this is kind of an impromptu edition of the Huddle Up podcast tonight. We're opening up to the mailbag because it's a bye week. Not a lot of news has come out, so if you have any questions for Scott or I, please put it in the chat, and we'll get to you tonight. We promise you. Mark Knapp jumping in. Appreciate you, Mark. He asked, can we sign or trade for Durance Armstrong? He can play 4-3 or 3-4. Dallas doesn't appreciate him, in my opinion. Well, Mark, they're going to need him right now because DeMarcus Lawrence is still on IR and Randy Gregory is out for a few more games. Armstrong is a solid, if unspectacular player. I don't think he would do anything more than Malik Reed is doing right now, and or Shelby Harris would do if he would play up to potential after getting that contract. But more specifically, the trade deadline has passed for this season, so they're going to have to wait until after the season if they want to make that move. But Scott, he's kind of, you're reaching, I think, Mark, to target someone like that.
Yeah, and Mark, appreciate the stars. I don't know much about him, to be honest with you. I know the guys that he was talking about that were out, especially Randy Gregory, but I don't know much about him with the Cowboys. But it might be someone you can target for sure. And Andrew Baker's coming in for some stars. Mentioning target. The guys that Peyton has target with his budget free agency picks or trades, low value trades, have been really good. Those have been very helpful additions. So I don't put it past him to go and get some help from somebody's reserves at all. And Andrew says, "What's up, Zack and Scott and all Broncos brethren? Just showing some love. Appreciate you, Andrew. Let's come out of this bye week strong and healthy. Good Lord. Hopefully no one gets hurt during the bye week. We want to talk about all these things, and there's obvious deficiencies in this team. I mean, this isn't a controversial statement, but you start looking at this Eagles game in particular, and the Eagles, I've watched the Eagles a couple times this year, and when they're on, they are deadly in the lines of scrimmage. Going into this game, I said, and I'd forgotten about the Browns because I walked that back. I said, this is the best team in the trenches that you will have faced. You're going with 3 backup linemen, 4 new linebackers in your front 7, probably, and if you count the guys that have been replaced since then, like 8 new players. You've gone through several sets of inside linebackers. That it's devastating. If we had gone into a game saying, okay, you're going to play 3 reserve offensive linemen, I don't care who you are. That's tough to overcome. So part of this coming back and being the team you want to be isn't just personnel, but good Lord, you got to start being healthy.
Yeah, that's number one for sure. And I don't know about you, Scott, but normally I would miss the Broncos, but this time my blood pressure did not miss the Broncos. It was nice enjoying a Sunday without screaming at Vic Fangio and criticizing them for how poorly they've played. It's surprising, though, because they could have made a lot of changes over the bye week. They didn't have to necessarily fire Fangio or fire Pat Shurmur or bench Teddy Bridgewater, but they could have done something. And as of right now, what do we know? Nothing. It's literally nothing has changed. So we have to hope that the week off did the Broncos some good, and the light will eventually flip on for them. Not an easy matchup coming out of the bye facing the Chargers. They have the Chiefs coming up soon. They look like they're getting back to championship level. It's not going to be easy waters for the Broncos to wade through to get to the playoffs.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk early in the chat about where do teams finish and that type of things, and I think we can pencil the Chiefs in as the AFC West champions right now. They're starting to play really well at the right time. They're gonna be in the thick of it right to the end. Bills, hot and cold. Titans, who knows? They're capable of beating somebody, then losing to the Texans and the Jaguars. So it's just we get in our own little bubbles and our own tunnel vision, and then you look at around the teams and you're like, okay, the Broncos are 5-5. It's like, well, they lost to this team, and beat these crappy teams. Well, those crappy teams are beating other teams that are good. It's a strange year. I mean, for years, we said the NFL's dream is everybody finishing 8-8. They love parity. They want everybody in it till the end. They want to take everybody and make the product worse and bring them down so everybody is a crappy mediocre. That's how the system's set up. And this year, I think it's working.
Yeah, make everyone Jeff Fisher again. That's the whole plan for the NFL is mediocrity. But it's any given Sunday applies to the Broncos. I mean, they beat the doors off the Cowboys, but lost the following week to the Eagles. So you never really know. You have to have faith in Fangio, Teddy Bridgewater, Pat Shurmur, and the rest to right the ship. I don't personally have that much faith. I see a 7 or maybe 8 win season, but we shall see what happens.
And there we go. I've got like 6 browsers open where I go through stats and standings. And every once in a while, I'll autoplay video. I'm like, all right, which one of you is it? I think the Eagles can end up being a playoff team. Honestly,
me too.
They're 5. I think they're 5-6. 9-8 is going to get you an NFC spot. They just beat the Chiefs again, or not the Chiefs. I'm sorry, the Saints, I believe, who have lost 3 in a row since Jameis Winston won out and Trevor Siemian at the helm. Yeah. They've lost 3 in a row. Cowboys look like a lock in one of the spots. Buccaneers should be okay. Panthers, I was ready to put the Panthers in there, and then I see, they blew that game to the Washington football team. I'm like, does anybody want to go? It was a couple years ago, like a 7-9 Seattle team made the playoffs and then won a game. I'm like, that just sickens me, honestly. If you can't even have a winning season, you've got no business being in the playoffs.
Yeah. I don't know what it says, though, to the team that that couldn't beat them, a 7-9 team. There's a lot of parity going on around the NFL, and I think you're right to some extent, Scott. That's why they pushed extra points back. They want more drama. They want more close games and losses and this and that. But I couldn't believe personally today you have the Texans taking down the Titans. The first time a team, I believe, was on a 6-game winning streak, lost to a team that lost 8 games or something like that. It was NFL history being made. There were a lot of upsets today, and you never really know what's going to happen. But again, you have to have faith in Vic Fangio versus blank. Insert name here. And most of the time, I'll take insert name here.
All right, you mentioned something, and it sparked the chat a little bit about no changes, at least that we know of, being made in the during the bye week for next week. What are some of the things that and I'm going to start. I'm going to ask you the question, and it's loaded because I'm going to start. As far as one of the obvious things is let's get the ball more to Javonte Williams. Make him running back 1. And what I've been saying is I don't care what the title is. I think he's going to have more carries and more touches the rest of the season than Melvin Gordon. especially in crunch time. I think we are all but done seeing Melvin Gordon having crucial carries in crunch time. I think that's done, whether they say it or not. As far as some subtle changes here or there, I mean, obviously the big one is swapping quarterbacks. That's not going to happen. So what are some of the other subtle changes you'd like to see being made?
You can argue that Albert O should be tight end 1 over Noah Fant. You can argue you want to see more Aseng Bassi and Michael Ojemudia over Kyle Fuller, or more
Is
Caden
Ojemudia
Stearns.
back? Sorry to interrupt. Is Ojemudia back and healthy now? Is he ready to go?
I think he's off the list now. Yeah, he'll be practicing this week and hopefully playing on Sunday. You could see more Caden Stearns playing for Kareem Jackson. But, Scott, I think you nailed it. Other than quarterback, make Javonte RB1. Can we get that hype campaign going right now? I have a stat from Pro Football Focus from yesterday, so going into today's games. Highest percentage of total rushing yards on runs of 15-plus yards. There's 2 players on this list. Jonathan Taylor, who had 5 touchdowns today. He looks like the best running back in the NFL. And Javonte Williams. I don't see Melvin Gordon's name on there. I see Javonte's name, so he needs to be RB1. You can make other minor cosmetic changes, but except for benching the quarterback, firing the coordinator, firing the head coach, I think running back, tight end, safety are the ones that you have to look at.
No, the script I'd like to see was basically the Cowboys script, and I know that's easy to say with the win, but I'd like to see 20 touches between the running backs and then basically 25 throws. If we're running 65 plays, I want to see 40 touches or some screen passes. That's a handoff. It shows up as a pass. But I want to see 20 touches to the running backs. And then, then if you only get 3 targets to Sutton or Patrick, or right now, based on the personnel you have, getting them the ball and blocking for them, I'm okay with that. I want to see Javonte Williams getting the ball more, and I want to see Melvin Gordon getting the ball more. Then again, that's how the split went in the Cowboys game. It was just about 40 touches for those 2, and then about 25 throws. Okay, that's how this team's made to win. That's how this team is built. Why do we get away from it so easy and abandon the running game so fast?
You know the answer, Scott, as well as I do. The answer is Pat Shurmur. And I know it's not even baby steps for Pat. It's like fetal steps. It's getting both of them involved. But you have to recognize who's the best Broncos running back, especially in clutch, goal-to-go situations, even on 4th down. You saw Melvin Gordon fumbling the ball in one of those situations. I don't think Javonte would have done that. Give him the rock, and good things will happen.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. You better be Bo Jackson. If you're going to put the ball on the ground every so often, you better make up for it with 180 yards, Derrick Henry's type of production. The word that you hear around managers and players is like, why does he like this guy? It's like, well, he trusts this guy. He trusts this guy. And right now, Melvin Gordon has lost that trust. You cannot trust him to carry the ball. And if you cannot trust him to carry the ball in crucial situations, guess what? He ain't gonna. Unless there's a rotational problem, we just ran Javonte Williams 4 plays in a row, and he's coming out. You're going to see Javonte Williams in crunch time. I firmly believe that. You might see Melvin Gordon, and talked about how do you get the splits. Well, it might be an opener and a closer. Let's talk about baseball. Melvin Gordon might get 15 carries might be 15-5 in the first half, and then flip that 15-5 for the other guy in the second half. I think that's the way I'd do it.
And it's not just a one-time thing with Melvin. If that was his first fumble in a couple seasons, I could be like, okay, it's a fluke, it happens, every running back fumbles. But that's an ongoing issue with Melvin. And when you're making $8 million a year, Scott, and your young understudy is looking much better, you can't, like you said, like you alluded to, you can't put the ball on the ground. You have to come back and have a 100-yard effort, take over a game. Melvin Gordon has not shown capable of doing that. He's a good but not great running back, whereas Javonte can be a great running back. I mean, all-pro caliber running back.
Yeah, and an $8 million is all-pro running back money. I mean, the running backs are criminally underpaid for the type of abuse they take. But the good news is again, his contract's done also. You can get a Melvin Gordon type for a quarter of that money next year, and you've got your bell cow already on the roster. Again, great job, general manager D. It was like I said, it upset me enough that I'm still talking about it the week of Thanksgiving, for goodness sakes. And this was over the summertime. Shane coming in with some stars. And so watching the games today, Denver may make the playoffs. We have the players to do it. It falls on coaching. And the thing is, Shane, you're right. It's 5-5, and 9-8 is going to get a playoff spot right now. And nobody seems to want to go to the playoffs right now, except maybe the Chiefs. This game tonight that's just probably kicked off a few minutes ago, it's going to kind of tell us which of those two teams wants to go to the playoffs. Do the Steelers want to go? I think the Chargers do. I think the Chargers, if I look at their schedule and who they've beaten and who they've lost to, I know this sounds stupid, but good losses. They've lost to some pretty good teams that have played pretty well, that I think they've got a shot to – I picked them to make the playoffs. I think the Chargers are one of those teams that go in, whether they win tonight or not. But is it out of the question that the Broncos can go? No, it's not. But I saw a lot last Monday and Tuesday that tells me these guys don't want to play for Vic Fangio anymore.
Right.
And it's hard to win. It is hard to win when you've already punted on your coach and you're waiting for him to be gone.
I mean, you can play the Jets every single week. It doesn't matter if the players, like you said, don't want to play or the coaching's not there, to Shane's point. So, yeah, Shane, we've told you this in person, Chad and I. We have said this on the podcast for months and months and months now. They have the talent. And that's also, a feather in the cap of George Paton. He assembled a playoff caliber roster, Teddy Bridgewater included. It's up to the coaches to take the ingredients that George Paton gave them and make a recipe out of it, make a meal out of it. Right now, they ain't got no recipe. They ain't got no meal.
Yeah, and we can talk about the injuries and stuff, but there's also places on this team that we were expecting to be better that aren't. Garrett Bowles regresses. Dalton Risner regresses. Graham Glasgow regresses. Cushenberry's okay. I think if I had one nit to pick, I'd say you had money. Couldn't you have done better at right tackle? Could you have done better at right tackle with the free agent when you're sitting on $30 million of cap room? Could you have done better after you knew Jawan James was gone, especially after you got that money back? I don't know the answer to that one for sure, but it seems like you could have swung for the fences a little more instead of trying to go out and get $1 million guy here or there. Go get a dude. Shane, appreciate the stars. Miguel coming in. Holy guacamole, Batman. The Broncos didn't lose this weekend. Whew, I was nervous. Like I said, sometimes it's nice. One of my favorite things on the world is having the first game of the weekend, watching your team kick somebody's butt, and then just sit back and watch everybody else beat each other up. It's so satisfying. Being off, it's close. Y'all know I'm a big soccer fan, and everybody hates the draw. But have you ever watched two teams play and you wish they could both lose? That's a tie. That's exactly what it is. It's wonderful. So when you're a neutral, it's actually kind of fun to watch a draw because you're like, you both just lost points. Screw you.
Yeah.
So Miguel, appreciate the super.
A little known fact, though, Scott, the Broncos actually opened as home underdog to the bye week this week. So they got added this week with a victory, a rare victory. But Miguel, we appreciate your contribution. Hopefully you're looking forward to the Broncos' next game. And right now, it's 3-0 Pittsburgh. You're talking about the game on tonight, Pittsburgh, and they just scored. So it's going to be 7-3 Los Angeles. Not going to be easy taking them down. Vic Fangio is going to have to outcoach the Chargers. Well, we shall see what happens there.
Yeah, their record, you look at records, you look at stats, you're like, oh yeah, and it doesn't tell the whole story. We're a little more than halfway through the season. When we play 17, that'll tell the full story, and I think we'll know a little bit better. Dennis coming in with the super saying any 22 QBs we're taking over waiting for the better 23 class. If we wait for the 23 class, what do we do at QB next year?
I mean, you can go about this a couple ways. This is my opinion. If I was a GM, I wouldn't be governing the team 2 years down the road. I have to think about 22 while I'm still in 21, not think about 23 while I'm still in 21. So I'm probably going to take a quarterback from next year's draft class. It's not like they're chopped liver. They're still very talented players. Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, of course.
I like Sam Howell a little bit at North Carolina.
Carson Strong. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this draft class that can do some damage if you have the right coaching around them. So my opinion, Dennis, and Scott may disagree with me. I think George, if he goes that route for the rookie, he doesn't aim for Rodgers, Wilson, Deshaun Watson. I think he goes and plucks his guy from this year's class because it's his turn to get his quarterback.
No, and I think this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Was I don't think it's out of the question that you get two quarterbacks this year. If you get a guy like Malik Willis, I don't want him starting. So who becomes the guy that you have starting next year? A holdover guy. Somebody's gonna. We mentioned Kirk Cousins. Is it Teddy Bridgewater on a discounted contract for a year? I don't know. But it's certainly a possibility that you end up bringing another free agent quarterback, and you could do worse. You could do worse than Kirk Cousins. I mean, you are doing worse.
Right.
You have been doing worse than Kirk Cousins for somebody like that. But I think you almost have to go for a quarterback, even if it's lower in the rounds and there's somebody that you think, to take a flyer on. We talk about this before, and Nick Kendall would be the one to say, take a quarterback every year. I don't care. It's not fair to the guy you took before. Screw him. He's got to beat out this guy.
Right.
Think college football recruiting. You don't stop recruiting guys. They might not want to come, but this is the NFL. They don't have a choice. They have to go where we tell you to go. It's beautiful. So keep taking them, and appreciate the super Dennis. And I've got Andrew queued up over here, and I can't find it. So Andrew came back with some stars when we were talking about the running backs, and I'm just going to read it, Andrew. And it says, Melvin needs to carry the hard hit runs, then Pookie for some explosive runs in the end zone. It's all we have left, even with our awesome receiving core. QB needed for those guys. So, and I agree. Like I said, you could have an opener and a closer. It's not necessarily how that you split the carries. It's when you split the carries with those guys.
Exactly. If any of you guys watch how Dallas operates, and they have kind of a committee with Zeke Elliott, of course, and also Tony Pollard, who's the more explosive back, the younger back, the back that fans want to see. Sound familiar? So in this case, Melvin would be Zeke Elliott and Javonte would be Tony Pollard. I agree wholeheartedly with Scott there. It doesn't matter the numbers, it matters the context of those numbers. When you decide to take one off the field for the other. But when you have a 4th and 1 and you're going for it, and you have a running back that's breaking tackles left and right, ripping off chunk yards, why not give him the ball? It's
you've got
pure
a guy
confidence.
Coughing it up. This isn't a hard decision.
No,
it's not. One of my biggest pet peeves watching sports is when coaches try and go away from the obvious. It's okay. Keep it simple. Don't. They try and show everybody just how smart they are, and they just end up looking stupid. We both had a coach that was a very good coach and a bad general manager that liked to do that. Dan Reeves. He got himself run out of 3 jobs as a general manager because he wanted to try and take the guy from Northwest Louisiana, Texas Christian State instead of this freak of an athlete just to show what an amazing scout he was. And do the obvious. Sometimes it works. It's okay.
And you mentioned the Falcons a few times. You're talking about Kirk Cousins and the hate he gets. I don't really understand it either. And he's in that Matt Ryan realm that he just gets dumped on. And when you look at his numbers and when you watch the games, he's doing so much more with less around him. Did y'all see the Minnesota Green Bay game today? He outdueled easily Aaron Rodgers.
I was listening to it on the way back. I flipped it on when it came back, and I think. They both had amazing games, and if you're even knocking on the door of what Aaron Rodgers is, you're a pretty good quarterback. And Kirk Cousins has done it before. Matt Ryan's just about longevity. If you have the same quarterback for 4 losing seasons in a row, he's going to get crapped on. And I think one of the big issues with him also is next year, if you look at like cap hit, he's number 1. His cap hit is number 1 in the NFL. And he's not a number 1 guy. He's a above average quarterback, but that doesn't help. That doesn't help for sure.
I want to see Matty Ice get a ring. But Travis hopping in here, kind of a big comment. I'll read it quickly. Thank you, Travis. Good evening, Zach, Scott, and Broncos country. I totally agree with what you said, Zach. The only shakeups we will possibly see is running back, tight end, and safety. We do have the talent. It's the coaching that's hurting the team. Even, let's say, we do have Teddy next season. I think we can see better results with better coaches. What's your guys' feeling about Sutton, signed or tagged? Scott, I'll serve that to you first.
Right now, I think you offer him a contract. I don't think you tag him. If he turns down your contract in the tag, it's an average of like the top 5 salaries. Does that change? Has that changed? Do you know? It's the average that you get a 1-year deal guaranteed.
No, just the numbers change, obviously, but I don't think they're the actual.
But that's how they come up with the number. It's the average of the top 5 salaries. The top 5 salary right now at wide receiver is $20 million. Cortland Sutton's not playing like a $20 million receiver right now. So if you offer him, a similar contract, maybe another year or two, maybe a little more guaranteed money to what you order to give to Tim Patrick, and he turns it down, that's on him then. So okay, good luck. Hit the open market. See if someone wants to give you, coming off a bad knee and low production, where's he going to finish this year? You think he'll have 800 yards receiving? And you want to get $20 million? No. So I don't think you tag him.
There's the transition tag. I don't know if it works out the same as the franchise tag, but yeah, that's a good point, Scott. $20 million, that's what Amari Cooper's making. That's about what Keenan Allen's making. Julio Jones is making 22, DeAndre Hopkins 27.25. Those are the most expensive receivers in the NFL. I love Sutton so much, but coming off that ACL, I wouldn't put him in that bracket. I would offer him a deal like you said, and they have the leverage now, Scott, the Broncos do. They signed a starting receiver to a $10 million a year contract at base, and they also have Jerry Jeudy around and KJ Hamler around. So they can say, listen, Cortland, you want to stay here, we're offering you a contract commensurate to what you've done so far. If you don't want it, you're more than welcome to test the open waters. I think that's the hard line approach Peyton takes.
And I'm guessing you could probably get a pretty good receiver with that 2nd-round pick you got for Von Miller too.
Yeah, for sure.
So and then you get a pick back for Sutton if he turns it down. So I would make him a fair deal, what I think is a fair deal, and I would roll in what he was before, knowing what he was before the injury, because you want to give him some loyalty money also. Hey, we appreciate what you've done. You're underpaid on your rookie contract. We get that. You've been hurt. We want to reward you. We want you here. And you give him a fair deal, probably a little more than what a typical his production might say. And if he turns it down, you guys can live without Cortland Sutton. I would not tag him. I wouldn't. It's too much money for him right now.
Especially because a better quarterback would raise the talent of those around him. So
and we talk about before about, how come this guy's not getting any targets? This guy didn't get enough targets. Well, when you start adding up all those guys, it's like, well, Fant, Okowebanam, Patrick, Hamler, Sutton, I'm forgetting somebody, Jeudy, and I haven't even gotten to the running backs.
Right.
Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. There's 8 guys, and I don't think I even said Okowebanam. There's 9. They're not all getting 8 targets.
Mike
doesn't
Boone's
work
here.
like that.
Speaking of better quarterbacks, Mike S. hopping in here. Thank you, Mike, for joining us tonight. Mike asked, why would Russell Wilson want to come to Denver, kind of piggybacking off our previous conversation?
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely argue that he doesn't want to come to Denver, and there was that leaked list that he put out earlier this offseason. The Broncos weren't on there. I think it was Chicago and a couple other teams. I don't think Russ wants to live out his twilight in Denver through a rebuilding period. I think he wants to go to a win now, day one ready team. But do the Broncos even want Russell? If you've watched him after that finger injury and surgery, he's not looking like the same Russell Wilson. You have to wonder if Father Time is catching up to him as well.
Yeah, I think, again, it all depends on the cost. I'm always of the opinion, appreciate the question, Mike. And Randy came in with some stars earlier to saying, happy Sunday, everyone. Randy, appreciate the support of the show, as always. And it's nice being on this side, so I can say thank you, too. I know Chad and Zach always do, but I'm always on the backside at night when there's a different group in here. And it gives me a chance to say thanks to all y'all as well. for me, it boils down to everything. The cost. What is it? What is it worth? Are you good enough now where the one player gets you into the Super Bowl? If you have the quarterback, does it get you in the Super Bowl? If it does, then the cost is probably okay. I go 3 first-round picks, whatever, in a trade. If it's not, then how are you supposed to build around that guy in order to get him to a Super Bowl if you gave up all of your capital to get him? So that's a question you have to ask. To me, what's the cost? What's Russell Wilson going to cost? Deshaun Watson, before the legal stuff, it would have cost a ransom, but he probably would have been worth it for a team like Denver. 25-year-old, 3 or 4-time Pro Bowler, for goodness sakes. Yeah, he's worth it. Your quarterback set for the next decade and a half.
Here's a question I want to pose to you, Scott, from Todd Ostendorf. Thank you, Todd, for joining us tonight. Our secondary looks suspect after PS2, plus we stand to lose some free agent defensive backs next year. What is the bigger need going into 22, defensive end or cornerback?
I'd go the edge for me. One, I still prioritize edge a little bit more over corner because I've always said the best corner in the world is a quarterback on his butt. Von Miller in his prime makes cornerbacks look better. I think it's a lot easier to sack a quarterback and end a play than it is to get a coverage sack because your corners are so good as the receivers are these days. And with all the rules going against you in the back, when you're looking at Bradley Chubb hasn't been able to stay healthy. What are you doing? Is Jonathan Cooper the guy yet? He's playing well for a rookie. I'm not ready to crown him yet. A 7th round guy. I certainly wouldn't feel that comfortable coming in. As opposed to, as you said, if Ojemudia stays healthy, you got Ronald Darby on another contract. Right. Patrick Surtain's looking really good. I would want to go edge before I would go corner for this team. Malik Reed, we mentioned him a little earlier. He is a nice backup, but he's been abused as a starter. He's been abused. He's been targeted in the run game. The tight ends are just taking him out of the game, which leaves that entire side of the offensive line, making it easy to get to the second level. Every time you see a running play against you, the first time anybody touches him is usually 2 or 3 yards past the line of scrimmage. And part of that is because you're not controlling the edge right now. So I'd go defensive end. What about you? What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think in terms of the Broncos cornerbacks, you can look at it like kind of what Dallas did last year, or this year. It's Trevon Diggs and a kind of a bunch of Jags. What next year is going to be for the Broncos is PS2 and a collection, a mismatch of other cornerbacks. But like Scott said, Ronald Darby is coming back. He signed a multi-year deal. They would have to eat too much cap money, so he's going to be a starting cornerback. Patrick Surtain's looking like a future All-Pro or Pro Bowler. They're good there. And you can still finagle an Ojemudia to Sang Bass. You have Mike Ford playing well. You can draft a mid-round cornerback or acquire one. You don't have to invest a premium pick at that position. I'm right there with you at edge. I think I'm a little higher on Jonathan Cooper. I think he has
I like him. I love him. I'm just not ready to say you're good yet. Especially with injuries. I'd feel a lot better with another positive edge rusher than I would right now where I'd feel I need another corner. And part of that's just, again, my own bias. I like big receivers. I like defensive ends.
It's one thing that Von's gone, but the other thing is we can't even count on Bradley Chubb staying healthy, being healthy, or playing for the Broncos next year. They still could try to get out of that contract. So, yeah, definitely defensive end edge all the way. That's the bigger need.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We're on the same page there.
Charlie, we've been pounding this particular table for a couple years now. Can the Broncos draft a new trainer to keep our guys healthy? You can't mention he who shall not be named around these parts without drawing, cancel culture. So we'll just say we agree with you, and we hope that situation rectifies itself.
It's strange. I mean, looking at it from the outside in, if it was all muscle injuries, when you got 10 guys pulling at hamstrings, but the injuries run the gamut. Concussions, torn pectorals, knees, ankles, rolled up legs. It's strange. I mean, it really is. And it's not, I don't know. I hate to say this, but guys seem to stay healthier when they're playing for a coach they like better.
Yes, that's a good point for sure. Guys, we have about 12, 15 more minutes. This is going to be, again, an impromptu mailbag edition of the Huddle Up podcast over the bye week. So as we're winding down or getting ready to submit your questions if you have them, Maurice is chiming in here with a question. Thank you, Maurice. Do we have enough pieces in place to be in a win-now scenario if we were to snag a blue-chip quarterback? I think, look at the roster. I mean, on paper, not how they're coached, not how they've been performing under Vic Fangio. They don't have many weaknesses on paper. So if you add a blue-chip caliber quarterback in there, why wouldn't they be a win-now team? Why wouldn't they be a playoff team? I posit that despite the injuries, despite Vic Fangio, despite Pat Shurmur, if they had a better quarterback than Teddy Bridgewater this year, they would not be where they are record-wise.
Yeah, if I look at offense, for sure, all of a sudden we mentioned I went right across the offensive line. I mentioned everybody. They all get better. They're all playing better when they've got a quarterback that is a threat. A playmaking quarterback, the offensive line starts playing better. What scares me, though, is now the defense. The front seven is now a front three from what you started with. The guys that when you were starting the season, you're expecting Von Miller, Draymond Jones, Purcell. Then you go to Shelby Harris, Bradley Chubb, and then A.J. Johnson and Josie Jewell behind them. There's three of those guys still there, and Purcell has been moved in and out. So the only two players that are still there, in essence, are Shelby Harris and Draymond Jones. And it's not like they got beat out by other guys. They've all gotten hurt, traded, or whatnot. So couple that with the fact that Kyle Fuller, one of your big money free agents, hasn't been playing that well. And now I wonder, is the defense? Do you have the horses on defense to be a championship caliber team if you throw in the quarterback? Again, you gotta get healthy on some of this stuff, for God's sakes.
And you can't have Pro Bowlers everywhere. That's where you end up with the Josie Jewells and the Alexander Johnsons. But for the most part, I mean, when you have Shelby fell off, Mike Purcell fell off. We thought we'd see a bigger year from Draymond Jones. We can talk about the inside linebacker injuries. The loss of Von Miller, the loss of Bradley Chubb. The secondary has been disappointing. Simmons has come around, but you also have Caden Stearns blossoming. You have Patrick Surtain blossoming.
Those two should be up. Those two should be in the ascendancy.
So on paper, this is already a playoff caliber roster. It's right there on the precipice. If you add a quarterback to that, I don't see why not.
And going back to the edge versus cornerback discussion, if Bradley Chubb's playing on a contract right now, he's got 1 year guaranteed. And we talked about this. Is what I'd like to see is him play as lights out. Play lights out next year. You tag him. Yeah, that's who you get a tag. You don't give him a long-term contract until he proves he can do it several years, and that he can do it. That's a guy you say, okay, I'm going to give you $15 million as a franchise tag to go and do it again. Show me you can go get 15 or 16 sacks and be that guy again. Because right now, I don't have a lot of faith in it. So, are you going into next season, say Jonathan Cooper and Malik Reed? That's where you got to spend some money. That's where some of the draft capital's got to go, is to make that again. To me, there's no question. You got to upgrade the edge positions if you want to be a championship caliber defense.
It's so crazy when you said Bradley Chubb getting 15, 16 sacks. The very first thought I had was, no way. He's never going to do that. But it's crazy. A couple of years ago, he had 12 sacks. We all thought he was the second coming of Von Miller. Now we're all kind of anticipating his departure. So I'm right there with you. The better he does, the better the Broncos do. We're all rooting for Bradley Chubb, but you can't help the club from the tub. That's what it boils down to.
You need him.
But MRM, we need him, and we got him, Scott. MRM 5897 hopping in with a $10 super. Appreciate you so much, he says. They say, go Broncos. Appreciate you, MRM. Hope you're having a great weekend and enjoying the Broncos bye week. We're going to have to start winding it down, though, Scott. I think the chat is dying down. Again, guys, if you have any questions, last-minute questions, buzzer-beating questions for Scott or I, please put them in the comments, and we'll get to them, unless you have something else that you wanted to talk about, Scott.
Who do you think, we could hit the buy and sell? I mentioned that as a possibility. That becomes a whole other show. I said, for when you start looking at the contracts, who's going to be a Bronco next year or the year after? Is Bradley Chubb, and I'll just make this simple since we're right here. Is Bradley Chubb going to be a Bronco in 2023?
2023?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that. That's quite a ways away. I would say it's not even a slam dunk. He'll be on the team for in 22, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I can't answer that right now. As of right now, right this second, I'm gonna say no. He hasn't
Okay.
done enough to warrant a second contract, but he has the potential to. All he has to do is stay healthy. That's the number
Yeah,
one
I
thing.
think he'll be there because his option's fully guaranteed, and nobody's going to want that. So unless you end up paying a bunch of money for him to go play for somebody else, nobody else is going to pay him. Let's say if you've got Spot Rack open, I think he's on like 11 million for next year or something.
Yeah.
No one else is going to pay him that much money. So he's going to be a Bronco next year. If he wants a second contract, and this is just absolutely the ideal situation for the Denver Broncos. If he wants a second contract, he's got to go earn it. He's in the definition of a contract here, and he's not 32. He hasn't made the money that Von Miller has. He needs to go out and get that second contract. It's ideal. It's ideal for him. If he goes out and earns it, and you tag him. I hate the franchise tag. I hate it. I think it's un-American. Tag him. That's what it was made for. Was for a guy like that.
And Peyton Scott has no loyalty to Bradley Chubb, even though he was a first-round draft pick. He was picked by the previous regime, and this is Peyton's baby now going forward. So, yeah, he has to earn it, or else I don't see him sticking around that long. But it's quite the question to ponder. Mark has a question for you, Scott. Is there no Broncos for breakfast tomorrow morning?
Mark, that is correct. No Broncos for breakfast tomorrow. We will be back on Tuesday morning, and I'm ready to go on Thanksgiving. So we'll talk about that with Nick on Tuesday. About, hey, what are you doing at 6:30 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day? Broncos for breakfast? It's okay with me. I'm not going to be doing anything.
Travis hopping in here. This is a good question to end on, Scott, for this evening. Speaking of speculative queries, Travis goes, how many wins do you see going into the rest of the season? I kind of gave it away, Travis, at the beginning of the episode when I said I see a 7-10, maybe 8-9 team if they can get their you-know-what together. And that would mean Teddy Bridgewater actually not quitting on the team, Vic Fangio actually coaching to his potential, Pat Shurmur being in the year 2021, so on, so on, so on. If they can do that, they can make maybe a late-season playoff push, but I'm judging the Broncos based on what I saw last. And what I saw last is a team that doesn't want to play for its head coach, like you said, doesn't have it at quarterback, doesn't have it at some spots, injury-riddled. They just, I've lost all my optimism. I've lost all hope in picking them to win games going forward. They've burned me too much. So right now, I'm not feeling too optimistic. I would say 7-10, guns to my
Zach,
head.
I like to say we're in the shame on me phase of this relationship.
Already?
We're in the fool me once, fool me 5 times, shame on me.
Yeah.
I look at the rest of the schedule. All right, we'll just run through it real quick and then we'll get out of here. Chargers, no. Loss. At Kansas City, no. Loss. Detroit Lions at home. Yeah, there's a win.
Maybe.
But I'm going to say
know.
Bengals, no. I don't think so. That you don't match up with the AFC North teams worth a darn. And I said that at the beginning. They are beating you in the line of scrimmage, and the Bengals are playing pretty good football right now.
Yep.
At Raiders, there's your swing game to get your 2. That's the one. If you're going to get to 7 wins, that's the one, because you're not going to win the next week at Chargers, and you're not going to win versus Chiefs. So I would say 1.5.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Like I said, we're in the full shame on me phase of this relationship, and until they show, and they haven't for a while, that they want to go out and play,
right?
Who do you pick them to beat except Detroit, who's going for the number 1 pick?
Or maybe a random game they get up for, like Kansas City or the Chargers. But the Bengals,
and you hope it's like, oh, it could be Week 17. The Chiefs may have it locked up. If the Chiefs don't have anything to play for, and they've already got their seeding locked up right now, but that could be a game where they're playing for a bye, or they're playing for home field throughout the entire playoffs. They're not losing that game.
Also playing to beat their bitter rival. They don't want to ever lose to them, and then that streak as well. So, yeah, I mean, maybe 8 wins. If they have a miracle, maybe 9 wins, and they would vie for a wild card. But as of right now, that Philly loss.
It's 5-5. You're going to get 4 out of that?
I don't think so.
I have trouble seeing 2.
After the Philly loss, that destroyed what little confidence I had coming off that Dallas victory, which proved to be a mirage, an outlier, the exception, not the rule. So, Travis, great question. I love pondering this kind of thing. I don't see many wins in the Broncos' future. And it seemed like the Bengals, for example, they would be a joke a year ago, but they just beat the doors off the Raiders. And the Raiders swept the Broncos last year. So nothing is going to be easy. Even Detroit with Dan Campbell is going to be a challenge for the Broncos. So yeah, I 7-10, 8-9.
Cincinnati's 6-4.
Playing good football.
I mean, they did lose to the Jets, so they're obviously beatable, and that was a road game. So at Jets they lost, and they got crushed by the Browns, but then they just went to Las Vegas and killed them. So yeah, I think a split. So I'll go 2. A split Raiders-Bengals. You beat the Lions, split with Raiders and Bengals, depending on who decides to show up that day. 2 more wins, 7-10.
Yeah, by the way, the Chargers now are up 14-3 on a Steelers team that kind of whipped the Broncos a few weeks ago. So it's going to be tough sledding unless things turn around. And after watching that Philly game, coming off the Dallas game, entering a bye week, how could you ever think things are going to turn around for the Broncos? But that looks like it's going to do it, Scott, for tonight's episode of the Huddle Up Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in with us for kind of an impromptu, like I said, a Chad-less version of the Huddle Up Pod. We'll be back tomorrow night. Back as usual, back in the saddle, 8 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Mountain. In the meantime, follow the Huddle Up Pod on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. Follow Scott on Twitter, as you can see, at Scout Kennedy, not Scott, Scout Kennedy. You can follow me at Kelberman NFL. If you haven't, go to huddleuppod.com and get yourself a Broncos for Breakfast coffee mug. Get yourself a dad hat. Get yourself a hoodie for the upcoming winter. Everything is in that store. Navigate there right now, huddleuppod.com. Also, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Become a supporter. Big blue button. Kelberman's Corner, for those wondering, and for those who didn't see my tweet, returns next Sunday at halftime of the Broncos-Chargers game. So we have that to look forward to. Also, Trickle Zone Broncos Book Club each and every week. I promise you guys that VIP content is worth it. Also, facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Like that page. And if you haven't, go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest, that includes Scott, of course, a 5-star review for a chance to win some swag each and every month. But if you can't do any of those things, do these 3 things. It takes 5 seconds. Subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. Helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you. Scott, I appreciate you so much filling in tonight for Chad. It's always great talking to you. Let's do this again soon. Have a great weekend. Do you have any parting words?
No, DB asked what's on my sweatshirt. I was wondering who might notice these Broncos colors that I got. These are actually Auburn colors too, so it fits in well. The one thing, tomorrow night is the raffle for the jersey of your choice. So the Facebook and YouTube folks, make sure everybody, you're all here anyway, but just a reminder, a little extra to get excited about. We're going to raffle off the Denver Broncos jersey of your choice tomorrow night. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Raffle tomorrow, Huddle Up Pod tomorrow, 6 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Eastern as normal. Take care, guys, and as always, go Broncos.